Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on DevOps Master, presented by Abby Wiltz of Ahead Technology. My name is Elizabeth McDonald, Regional Manager for EXIN North America. Our presenter today, Abby Wiltz, is an IT enterprise best practice subject matter expert, and she will be walking us through the topic of DevOps, how it works with other best practices, and why it is beneficial. But before we get going, just some logistical items. You've all been placed in mute, and the session is being recorded and will be available to you afterwards. Questions are welcome, and you're encouraged to use the chat feature to document your question. Questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. With over 25 years business experience, Abby Wiltz is recognized as a world-class strategic process solution consultant who partners with her clients to become more efficient and effective in running their IT organizations. She has worked globally, delivering consulting and training services to clients in many industry sectors, including telecom, public, utilities, oil and gas, IT, financial, manufacturing, media, and healthcare. Abby's area of expertise is in the development of IT service management processes and in providing program and project management leadership of these implementations. She specializes in the ITIL best practices, including the translation of these business process requirements to supporting ITSM technologies. Abby excels as an experienced facilitator, lecturer, and trainer. She is committed to the successful delivery of total solutions to her client base, achieving through respect for the management of change issues involved in the resulting integration of people, processes, and technology. Welcome, Abby. You're free to begin the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and welcome everyone to our DevOps Master webinar. As Elizabeth mentioned, my background is in IT service management best practices, and it's been really interesting to see the progression and proliferation of best practices that have emerged over the past few decades in the area of IT. So as we'll see today, a DevOps approach really is the culmination of these best practices coming together and representing this new world of DevOps. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this webinar, so the team at EXIN Examination Institute and Ahead Technology. And by means of introduction, Ahead Technology is a worldwide consulting and training company specializing in enterprise best practices for IT. With offices in North America and Europe, Ahead offers training and consulting through a network of professionals with real-life experience and in both official languages of Canada, both French and English. And just a point, I'm not sure if you know, but Ahead Technology is the first training provider to be DevOps Master accredited in North America. So we're very pleased to be able to talk and spend some time with you today talking about DevOps. So our agenda, we're going to go over a few of the DevOps fundamentals, so where it came from, the basic structure, how it works with all these other best practices out there, why it's to adopt, and some technical details. And we'll close with talking about what this new DevOps Master course means to you and open up for any questions. Now, this is a very, very broad topic, so this is just a brief overview, and you'll have more in your free gift, which will be sent to you after the webinar, which is a fundamentals PDF, and you'll also have time to review some of the details on the slides in the webinar recording, as Elizabeth mentioned. So with that, let's move forward and let's talk about who should be interested in DevOps. Really anybody in IT, because it spans all different areas. It's not just development. It's not just operations. It's based on Agile, as we'll see, so our Scrum Masters, our project managers, our test engineers, service managers, process managers from our IT service management world, really, and IT operations and development, of course, and sysadmin. So really anyone within IT will benefit of learning about DevOps and where this came from and why it's important to organizations. So let's go into a few of the fundamentals of DevOps. So first we'll start with where did it come from. Interesting history here. In 2009, a gentleman named Patrick Dubois, he created the first DevOps Day conference in Belgium. And what happened was he actually missed a conference where there was a birth of a feather that was talking about development and operations. And there always has seemed to be this disconnect between development and operations. They have different goals, different metrics, development focused on getting the code done, and then handing it off, hopefully not throwing it over the wall to IT to release and deploy. And then they're on to the next project. Whereas IT operations is always traditionally looking at keeping the lights on, providing a stable environment, et cetera, for the live applications and services. So Patrick started this conference in 2009, and in 2010 it started to gain some momentum. We saw conferences held in Sydney, Australia, followed by Mountain View, California, so the US. And then we saw some point vendor solutions starting to create the enabling technology, so Puppet and Chef, some of these point vendors. In 2011, we got Gartner's blessing, and Gartner formally recognized DevOps as an emerging practice. And from there, some of the enterprise software vendors took notice, and they started to create their own DevOps platforms. They started to adopt DevOps themselves, and that's where you see the players like HP and IBM. Now, DevOps Days are held worldwide, and you can see the link here, devopsdays.org, if you're interested in attending these. One thing that's interesting about DevOps is there's no one single source. There's no one body of knowledge like a DevOps BOK, like we have for PM BOK or BA BOK. It really is a collective of knowledge, and it's based on many, many different aspects of quality and culture and technology that's available. And at its core, it's based on 3 pillars. That's Agile, so disciplined Agile, continuous delivery, and IT service management. And these pillars are supported by the foundation of Lean that we received from Toyota Production System. So very interesting that it is a combination of all these different practices. We'll take a look at more of these pillars and the foundation in a bit more detail going forward. But I think what's really of note is that DevOps, when people talk about DevOps, it's a cultural movement. So as this quote says here, it seeks to improve both software development and the professional lives of people involved in the field. I'm assuming most everybody here is from IT, and we know that life is not, it's not good work-life balance at the best of times. Technology just made us more available, it seems. There's got to be a way to work better, work smarter. And that is really what underpins and makes DevOps unique. And we'll talk more about that moving forward here. So what is DevOps? There's no real firm definition. You can ask different people, you'll get different answers. It is a contraction of the 2 words, development and operations. But it really is this whole idea of managing this full service and application lifecycle. So from the intent with the customer and the need from the customer for new functionality, being able to enable their business with applications, through to development, IT operations, and then right through to end of life. One of the points that we talk to here is this cultural aspect of a blame-free, diverse culture supports a fail fast and fail often approach. Think of that, fail fast and fail often and blame-free. How many people have participated in a major incident post-mortem and had the finger pointing, right? This really is what we're trying to get away from with DevOps and say it's okay to fail as long as we learn from it and improve as we move forward. And we'll see some examples of this. Our goals then are to provide that just-in-time applications and services. There's your blame-free culture again, the cultural aspect. But really, it's looking to manage this life cycle, and we are we're taking advantage of all of the technology that's available, all of the knowledge that's available from these pillars of best practice, and being able to deliver to the business outcomes and measuring success in terms of the business, like time to market, like reducing operational costs, and hopefully increasing sales and profitability there. So that is our goal. There is an organization called Puppet. Some people may use their technology for, they work in the configuration management space. and some of the infrastructure as a code technology that's available. And they have run surveys where they've looked at, over the past, I think it's about 3 years now worth of data, at companies who have adopted DevOps, and some of the outcome is pretty impressive. I deployed 200 times more frequently, with more than 2,000 times faster lead time. I like the third bullet point here, which is spend 22% less time on unplanned work and rework, and spend more time on new work, like features and code, and getting that software out to the clients. And by doing so, that's where you have that better employee loyalty. It creates a better working environment within IT itself. And it's all based on having this experimental approach to product development, fail fast, fail often, and that continual learning perspective. So this is the 2016 State of DevOps report from Puppet. And the benefits of adopting, so obviously we can see some statistics here of companies that use DevOps outperform those that don't. We want repeatable, reliable, predictable value streams to be able to deliver and leverage automation and deliver code quickly to the customers and clean code to the customers. And from a customer's perspective, they only receive the return on investment when the software is delivered to the business and they can start using it. So we want to be faster to respond to business needs moving forward. Does it really work? Interesting, Netflix is very much a case study for the adoption of DevOps. And they host the Netflix service in the Amazon Web Service Cloud. They have built what's called, it's open source code, they call it their simian army of code, and they created one called Chaos Monkey. And what that does is it goes out and tries to intentionally fail components within the delivery chain of their service. And they really have embraced this fail fast, fail often, and learn from your failures so that you can improve your resiliency. And March 1st, 2017, the cloud failed. Amazon Web Services failed. And you see a tweak here that Netflix actually stayed up and was working, whereas Amazon Video Services, so Amazon's own streaming service, failed. So there is examples of this working very effectively for companies that have adopted this approach. Thought this one was interesting. So because we can't really say, really put our hands around what DevOps is, a lot of people talk about what DevOps isn't. And you see here a list of some misconceptions here. We know that it involves multiple stakeholders, not just developers and sysadmins, but also your IT operations, security, quality teams. The one I like here is DevOps is a team. Well, there's a lot of debate on this. There's pros and cons to both. You can build a team to start some of your DevOps initiatives. However, the danger with teams is that it becomes siloed. And what we want to do with DevOps is break down these silos that exist. So there are pros and cons. Be very cautious approaching as a team. It's about the tools. It's about automation. Well, we all know the phrase, a fool with a tool is still a fool. Just because you have Jenkins doesn't mean you're, quote, doing DevOps. DevOps never really stops. It's based on the concept of continual improvement. So, and it really is that cultural change that we move forward with. Okay? And one that I want to talk about a little bit here is it's only relevant to startups or web startups or what they call unicorns. Well, unicorns, yeah, sure, they're out there. That's your Netflix, your Etsy, Twitter, Facebook. So they have all very, very early in the game adopted these principles just by coincidence, by nature, by choice. But we also have some of those, quote, slow plodding horses that have adopted these too. So the enterprise, and we see here we've got the key software vendors that actually have adopted DevOps in their shop, IBM, HP, CA, Microsoft. We've got financials, so GE Capital or Capital One. We've got retail, You see some manufacturing here, so GM, so big enterprise companies, as well as public service, so some of the government services. So it does truly apply across the board, and it is it does work. We do have evidence of this the success that has been gained within these companies. There is one book that is kind of at the heart of DevOps, and this was published by Gene Kim, Kevin Baer, and George Spafford. It's called The Phoenix Project. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I try and explain what I do to my family and friends, they kind of look at me with a blank stare, and I wish I had a PowerPoint presentation. What's great about this book, not only does it give you a wonderful story that presents all of the aspects of DevOps, but it also is written in a language that we understand. People read it and say, oh, they know what I do. So highly recommended. This book is one of the core reading books for this course. And it is, we have a bibliography at the end of the slide deck that you can reference for any of the reading material here. And what they introduce, and it is really at the core of DevOps, is these 3 ways. So we've got the first way, which is all about flow, understanding flow from left to right. So from the concept with the customer and the requirement from the customer through development to IT operations to the customer, and leveraging a lot of the lean principles where you never pass defects downstream. You identify defects early, you get that feedback, and then you resolve and then move forward. The second way is that feedback loop. So instead of going left to right, going right to left. So making sure that you're getting, whether it's through testing or whether it's through direct feedback from the client, the feedback that you require. And then the third way is all about culture. And it's this culture of continual learning, innovation, fail fast, fail often, blame-free environment, all of those different elements. So once again, if you have not read The Phoenix Project, I highly recommend it. It's just an interesting, easy read to start with, and it gives you a good insight into DevOps. Within the DevOps course, the DevOps Master course, there are some fundamental concepts that are expected to be in place. Now, within the Ahead Technology version of the course, we have actually included a day of refreshing and training on these core fundamentals. So you see things like the software operation system methodologies, all of our development, release, and deployment concepts there, infrastructure concepts, and the cultural piece. So we're going to cover just a couple of these in this presentation. And there, as I said, you will get that free gift, the PDF, that has more details on these fundamentals as well. So let's start with software development methodologies. Here you see the more traditional waterfall, so the waterfall approach to software development. So you've got that sequential progression from one stage to the next. And that's not going away. There are still going to be times that you need to follow that waterfall approach for specific types of software development. On the other side, we've got our Agile approach. So that's your iterations, that's your collaborative, your smaller teams, very lightweight, very flexible. And we've got supporting that Scrum, which is our Agile method that focuses on maximizing the ability here to deliver those requirements within strict rules. So you might have heard the term bimodal, companies working in bimodal. Gartner came out with this. And that's really, this is an essence of bimodality from a software development perspective, where we've got the more traditional waterfall working in tandem with that more Agile and Scrum approach to software development. But one thing to remember is that DevOps is not so rigidly defined as to prohibit any particular methodology. The principles around DevOps apply to each type of this methodology here. Now, as one of the core pillars of DevOps, we've got Agile. So just very briefly, Agile is really focused on these short, iterative, incremental time box elements of software development and work. And its focus is ultimately the customer value and getting that code out to the customer quickly. So that's Agile. And we've got Scrum, so very much in short for Scrum. Scrum is very specific methodology within Agile where you've got very clear rules, you've got clear activities, you produce specific artifacts like a product backlog, a sprint backlog, and you've got rules that govern time frames, time boxing, et cetera, to get your code out. It's here where we also see user stories created. It's here where we also see a very clear definition of done, which is very important as well. And a lot of times people, another myth that's out there, people say that DevOps is just Agile. But really, it's more than just Agile or just Scrum. When we talk, for example, when we talk about definition of done, what we need to include is also the non-functional requirements like performance, like capacity, like security, like availability. And those traditional operational elements need to be just as clear and test set and test cases and acceptance testing as it is for the more traditional user stories and use cases. So Agile and Scrum as the pillars. We also have as a core foundation of DevOps, we have Lean. Okay? So Lean, it started quite a while ago, 1950s. It was introduced with the Toyota production system. GM really took this on back in Jack Welch's days, and Six Sigma kind of grew out of this as well. And the key focus of Lean is to increase customer value and eliminate waste. Lean actually talks about 8 mudas, which are waste, things like looking for waste in defects, in overproduction, etc. Really, Lean itself they describe it as a rational, data-driven approach, and it's focused on getting rid of activities that do not add value. So for my fellow IT service management folks out there, think about that and think about adopting Lean approach around the concept of our processes like change management or configuration management. So again, the underpinning foundation of DevOps. And I want to just put a quick note here on continual improvement. So whether we talk about IT service management, whether we talk about Agile, whether we talk about Lean, it really, what underpins all of this is this concept of continual improvement. It could be Deming cycle, the plan, do, check, act, so slow, small, incremental change over time that starts to change behaviors, change culture, etc. So that is underpinning any of these pillars and or foundations that we talk about that are part of DevOps is continual improvement. The last pillar we have is IT service management, and the most recognized methodology or best practice for IT service management is ITIL. And the focus here is how do we deliver value to customers with our IT services. And what ITIL does is it describes life cycle phases and processes that allow us to actually deliver value to our customers. The life cycle itself flows from service strategy, so initial inception of the service design, service transition, service operation, and then there's that ever-present continual service improvement. One of the myths out there or debate topics is that DevOps is incompatible with ITIL, and that DevOps itself actually arose as a backlash to ITIL, or IT service management. They are completely complementary. So the whole idea of IT service management and ITIL is to provide that stable environment and operations for development to use to deploy their code and to deploy these solutions out to the customer base. We need to be smarter though. in IT service management, we need to also adapt to this changing world and take a look at some of our key business items, our key business processes like change management or configuration management, incident management, and see if there's ways that we can become more agile in response to this business need. So there is a concept of what's called agile service management out there, and that's where we apply these agile principles to the IT service lifecycle and enabling processes. And we're actually using things like Scrum and Kanban, which we're visual mapping of work in progress, value stream mapping. We're leveraging automation. So for example, automating workflows and change models and incident models. And really this whole goal of looking for waste, looking for non-value add activities and lessening the bureaucracy. For example, standard changes. Why don't we take more advantage of that? So another area that's really interesting here is Agile CSI, and where the CSI register of your service improvement projects can become the initial process product backlog for you, and applying some of, especially some of the Scrum approach to working through your process improvement product backlog. Very, very interesting adoption there. So they are quite complementary together. At this point, we're going to get just a little bit more technical, not too technical, and talk about some of the technology that supports DevOps and DevOps environments. So the first is version control and configuration management. So we've got version control systems. They're called many different things: source control, source code management, revision control. And what happens here, and we'll talk to this more in the next slide on continuous integration, is that developers make small changes in groups called commits or revisions, and those are branched into the main system, excuse me, and stored as deployable code, and we'll see how that works with continuous integration. There are some point vendors here for version control. These are things like Git, GitHub, TFS, so Team Foundation Server in the Microsoft environment. And along with that is configuration management. And again, configuration management has a lot of different meanings for people, but really what we're saying is that you need systems that help you to do things like recreating your production system from scratch from your version control assets, or can you revert to a clean state of your application easily, quickly, automatically, if possible, and can you ensure that all your deployed environments are set up the same? So your DTAP, right, dev, test, acceptance testing, and production environments. And vendors in the configuration management market are vendors like Puppet and Chef and Ansible. So that's your version control and configuration management. What we've also got is a concept that's adopted by developers, which is test-driven development and continuous testing. And the whole idea here is that developers actually will write their tests first, then write the code, and make sure that the code passes the test. So you get very, very quick feedback on the quality of the code and if there's any issues. And the whole goal here is to shorten the development cycle times. And it can also be integrated into Agile Scrum approaches. So we want to shorten those feedback loops for developers. So it's a bit of a change for some developers from their perspective to actually write those tests first. And in the test space, from a technology perspective, we've got products like Selenium, which it's a multi-platform, multi-code environment or test suite. And we also have point test suites like Cucumber for Ruby, Ruby on Rails. Okay. So by having those two together, we get into this world of continuous integration, and it's a core practice for DevOps. And this is really doing changes to code more frequently in smaller change sets and merging them into the main branch into your version management system, so that if there are errors, you can go back quickly and revert quickly to correct those before they move further downstream, and hopefully before they go into production, by all means. Okay? So we've got a lot of CI systems out there that can help do this. Things like, this is where you see some of the big ticket players like Jenkins, TeamCity, Jira. These are all tools and vendors that have tool suites that help do this continuous integration work for us to be able to merge code into the mainline branch. And you want to do that on a regular basis, at least daily, if not constantly throughout the day. The reason we do this is to enable what's called continuous delivery. And the whole goal here is to always have code that is in a releasable state. Whether we choose to automate deployment or not, that's a different story. But we want to ensure that the code that we have is always ready to be released. It's really this concept of continual delivery is a collection of our tools, so things like our version control, our configuration management, continual integration tools, code review, monitoring dashboard tools. And it is ensuring that software is always releasable. If there's an issue, things stop. We bring it back to a deployable state. And it does enable this concept of a push-button deployment, and that's where we get into some of the change that comes into IT operations, infrastructure as a code. So if you look in operations today, most everything's scripted. You can script a stand-up of an environment, of VMs, etc. So this is really at the core. This continuous delivery is at, and these concepts we're talking about here is at the core of our ability to quickly and with high quality deliver code out and applications out to the customer. Okay. Now, continuous deployment. We just talked about continuous delivery, which means that changes are in a tested state and could be deployed. And continuous deployment means that they get deployed into production automatically. This is where you see the companies that have the 200 changes a day. So we need to refresh a posting on Etsy for somebody's new homemade product. So you can choose to do continuous deployment. You do not have to. It's always a choice there. And it depends on your environment, your regulations, et cetera, policies, et cetera. Now, how all this works, and where a lot of organizations start with DevOps, is that they define their deployment pipeline. You can model this deployment pipeline as a value map. So use some of the lean principles there for value mapping. And what we're seeing here is a very simple deployment pipeline, where we have the delivery team who actually checks in their code to the version control system. And there is build and unit tests that are run, hopefully automated. And in this example, we see a failure where the feedback is sent directly to the delivery team. They check in new code, they fix it, check in new code, they pass the build and unit test. In this case, they happen to fail the acceptance test. It goes back to the developers. They work on the code, they check it in, it passes both the unit test, build and unit test, and the acceptance test. At that point, that code is in the version control systems and the deployment systems. It is ready to be deployed into either the UAT and or the full production environment. And once again, whether you automate that deployment or not is up to you. But this deployment pipeline, you may have different deployment pipelines defined for different environments. However, it is the work to map out this flow that really starts to make this all of these different theories possible as we move through. What we also need to do, so DevOps, as I'm hoping you get a sense of, it's not just tools, but we can't do it without tools. So we want to actually identify a DevOps tool chain. So from all of these different areas, code, plan, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor, you can identify and map the different enabling technologies, because it will always be a suite of technologies that allows you to achieve this. This next slide, and there's many out in Google land. If you go out and just Google, can you show me a landscape of DevOps tools? You can see, so from source code management, here are some of the vendors. Continuous integration, here are vendors. Configuration management, et cetera, deployment monitoring. So this is what you start to map out as you map out both your pipeline and your tool chain. So it's a very diverse market there. Okay. But just a note, remember, DevOps isn't a tool quick fix, nor is it purely about automation. It truly is this cultural change that affects all stakeholders within IT, and really has this focus on reducing non-value add activities and getting that code out to the software, so the code out to the client so that they can achieve their ROI quickly. And there's our fool with the tool is still a fool from Greedy Booch, so that still applies. Just some final words on culture. So culture is what culture is. Every company has its culture. Anybody who sets out to change culture, I wish you good luck. You'll hit your head against the wall. What you do is you set out to change individual behaviors, which over time changes your stories, which change your culture. There are some real key cultural changes here. I think one of the big ones is from that blame to blameless culture. You want to go from your functional silos, which we all operate in IT, to matrix teams. We want to have more of that collaboration happening, and from being risk intolerant to risk encouraging, and that continual learning, which is tied into that blame to blameless culture shift as well. Within the DevOps Master Course, we talk a lot about this at an advanced level, and it is based on what is called the 4 pillars of effective DevOps, another core book that supports the training, which is effective DevOps. And we talk about things and go into more details on what does collaboration really mean, how do teams work together, how do you create affinity when you do have disparate stakeholders with different goals, different approaches, how do you build that affinity within the teams? Obviously, how do you level technology as an enabler to be successful, and how do you scale this effectively? So how do you go from maybe a small center of excellence startup through to a large enterprise deployment or adoption project of DevOps? And I love this quote here from Patrick Dubois. So DevOps is truly a human problem. We've got the technology, all of this is in place, it's just how do we make it work? And with that said, the critical success factors, so always leadership, visionaries, top-level support that are open to collaboration, this culture of openness, high trust, continuous learning, embracing risk and failure, recognizing that DevOps never ends. So DevOps is not a project that you do, wipe your hands off and off you go. It is this ongoing maturity and continual improvement over time, all with a focus on delivering value. You definitely need the enabling technology and automation, and you need to be able to break down those core specialist and functional silos that exist and truly create that affinity of the team working in collaboration to deliver the code out into the environment. So with that, we'll just close with talking a bit about the new DevOps Master Course. One thing that was very interesting was this survey that was done by CA Technologies. And when they asked what the requirements for DevOps skills are, what was surprising is that the experience with specific tools was dead last, 12%. You can always learn how technology works, but look at the soft skills here, people skills and project management skills and communication skills, and it was just a really interesting feedback that was received from this survey. So based on that, EXIN put together this DevOps Master certification. And really it's helping to facilitate, really a DevOps Master should be able to facilitate an organization's transition to DevOps. So having that overview of how all these components work together, what needs to be in place to be successful in a DevOps adoption program, and truly what is important to be able to move this along, especially underpinning with that cultural aspect. There is a lot of buzz out there about DevOps. So even LinkedIn, if you go there, it mentions DevOps as a skill. It's increased 50% over the past couple of years. Some of the common entry points into this DevOps Master Program are people who have backgrounds in Agile and or testing, or IT service management, or Lean even. These are some of the background areas where we see students who have, or learners who have interest in the DevOps Master Program. Ahead Technologies DevOps Master Course, this is the structure of the course. It's delivered over 5 days, and the first part of the course is spent on those fundamentals to make sure that people are comfortable with those basics, kind of what we talked about today and then some. And then we go into the DevOps Master concepts and theories, where you see adoption, discussions around planning, requirements, design, right through to end of life. And what's really unique about this course is it's a real a practical course. So there's exercises, there's discussions, there's facilitated debates, there's presentations, and it does focus on a key set of practical assignments to test the competencies, as well as your exam preparation. And yes, there is an exam with this course. So in order to sit the DevOps Master exam, you have to have completed your accredited training with the accredited organization, and you need to complete your practical assignments. And then when you do take the exam, it's a 2-hour exam, multiple choice, computer-based, and 50 questions with a pass mark of 65%. And no, it is not an open book exam, but you will be well prepared from this course to be able to be successful in that writing. So what's unique about this certification is that no other DevOps certification addresses the practice of DevOps and the development of these competencies. It is based on International E-Competencies Framework, so really testing to ensure that you have the capabilities when you leave this course from a management perspective to be able to lead some of these initiatives. So the DevOps Master Course gives that overall management view of all the key elements of DevOps and what you might see out in the market space as well. And they have their place too, but the immediate practitioner courses in the market and what they do, they'll focus on specific areas within DevOps. So from a test engineer perspective, that kind of thing, as opposed to this kind of overall umbrella management view of how to lead these successful programs. And just to note, Ahead's DevOps Master Program is unique. It combines the fundamentals review to best prepare the learners to get the most out of their training. And just a response to question out there, thank Dakos. The prerequisites, it is having a fairly knowledgeable background in areas such as Agile and or IT service management and or Lean and or testing or from a development world. So those will all stand you well to be successful in this course. Other than that, there are no other prerequisites. So I hope you all did enjoy the discussion today. And remember, just because I'm saying, oh, I'm doing DevOps, I've got, I've got Puppet, I can do DevOps now, I'm doing DevOps. It doesn't fix everything. It really is people from all levels of the organization coming together with a common goal to achieve these types of almost incredible results that we've seen here. For those of you looking to perhaps get those basics. Here's a list of some of the courses that are available through Ahead Technology. So some at foundation levels, change management, ITIL, Lean, Agile, Scrum. And as I promised, here is the additional DevOps literature. So these are books that are recommended reading prior to taking the course. Of course, that's not always practical, but even if you don't take the course, these are really good books to extend your knowledge in DevOps and DevOps literature. And contact information. So there was a question here, is this course globally available? The answer is yes, Mark. So Mark, there is contact information here if you want more details on this. And EXIN from our Examination Institute and our sponsor here, Elizabeth Sims, contact information as well. So with that, I thank you all very much for your precious time over lunch. And we will open it up to any questions, and I'll pass this back to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Abby. That was amazing. Really appreciated your presentation and the in-depth information that you presented here. I do have one question first off. It talks about the change culture. Can you perhaps suggest that the time frame that an organization would be expected to see a change in their culture?
Yeah, okay, really good question. And I do not like to be vague, but I'm going to be, because it depends. It depends on your leadership style. It depends on your existing culture. It depends how far away you are on that pendulum from, you know, the innovation to maybe more of the traditional side of that bimodal element. It's going to be different for everyone. Everyone has you know, different skill sets, different awarenesses, different levels of maturity in different areas of expertise. There really isn't a set, you know, DevOps is going to take you this long to do. So again, I apologize for being a bit vague, but it really will depend on each organization uniquely as to where they're starting from and where they want to get to. But by all means, it is achievable regardless of where you start from. You just have to be very aware of your culture, very respectful of the existing culture, and realize that some things will be slower for adoption, and some things may be enabled because of your culture for adoption purposes. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. We have another question that's probably, given the fact that you did just become accredited, you could help out here. If you do not have practical experience, is it possible to be successful as a trainer?
Yeah, that's, you really need to have seen most of the elements of IT workings to help you be successful as a trainer in this. My background, so I started my career in IT operations, and I spent almost a decade in operations. And then from there kind of went, oh, what's this ITIL thing, and was certified in version 1 of ITIL. And it's interesting because I come to this from very much that ITIL background, which is, quote, IT operations. People always say, well, that's just operations, that's not development. But it is quite fascinating because I also did a lot of work in release management. So running the release projects and, you know, coordinating testing and working with developers, etc. So those are the kind of skill sets that will really help you be successful as a trainer. Obviously, background in Agile and Scrum would be very, very helpful in this as well. Any background in IT operations, even from the developer side, if you've got experience past just the code piece, that opens it up. Because it is such a diverse subject, nobody is going to be, quote, that, 10x engineer expert in DevOps in every single area. That really, I mean, we see even a job title called DevOps engineer, and there's a lot of debate out there saying, what the heck is that really? So from a trainer, you start with what you know, and what's going to be unique about the class and the course makeup and the participant makeup is that there will always be people there to share their experience with the rest of the team. So as an instructor at this level, you are more of a facilitator in that sense as well as having some of that some area of background there to stand you well in this course. I hope that was clear.
I think that was very helpful, Abby. We have a quick question here. Can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, all attendees will receive a YouTube link to the webinar next week through our normal process of saying thank you. Abby, a more in-depth question here. This week I joined a group of software developers. They work in an agile way but are not aware of the wider context and the concepts. How can we gain their interest?
That's really interesting.
They're really easy questions, aren't they?
Oh yeah, no, they're great questions. That's fabulous. There is one, something comes to mind. One is I would just kind of poke and ask them about Netflix. Ask if they know what Netflix is doing with the Simian Army code. I think that's kind of cool. It makes it real to people. In one of the books called Effective DevOps, there's actually a story. It's a very short story. And it describes the first day of somebody starting at Etsy. So Etsy is one of the unicorns that is a DevOps, a banner company. And it talks about how they were brought on board and how easy it was, how everything was just there for them, everything worked. So maybe a small snippet of that. At the end of the day, though, to get people interested in something different or in what represents a change to a lot of people, which of course people love change, right, is you need to figure out if something is really broken, if there's a point of pain. And if you can identify that and then introduce this concept as a possible resolution for that area of pain, then it makes it real to the people in your group. And at the end of the day, management of change aspect is all about answering with them. What's in it for me? What's in it for me to change? What's the benefit to me? So if you can think of it from that perspective, how will it make their lives better? How will it make their job more pleasant, more give them more back in that position? Then that would be an area to focus on and where you could introduce some of these concepts. And finally, what I've been doing, I've kind of been, in my different contracts that I've been working on, is saying, have you read The Phoenix Project? And it's such a cool book, and it's interesting because it's kind of caused this kind of underground wave, and people are reading it and quite enjoying it. So maybe that's a way of approaching it too. So.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Abby. I do not have any more questions now, so I'll just give the attendees a second if there is something you'd quickly like to add. No, it looks like that's all of our questions for today. Abby, again, thank you very much. This was an excellent presentation, and I want to thank everybody who has joined. the webinar as well. As mentioned, you will get a copy of this next week, as well as the free gift that was promoted as well. So just want to also add that we've got a survey at the end of this to make sure that these types of webinars are something that you would find of value, and I would appreciate your time in filling them out. It's a new process that we're trying here, so with the survey, so I appreciate your patience in our new process. So thank you all, and have a great day.